Um,
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Acts of Connection event for today. We'll get started in a minute, just waiting for everybody to jump into the call. And I don't know what Jess is doing. We're here today. It's World Bee Day, one of my favorite days on the calendar. In celebration of World Bee Day, I've changed my background to the blue banded bee, which is, of course, one of our beautiful native bees, which I've yet to see in the wild. I'm still on the hunt to see one of these beautiful bees, but hopefully once my garden's a bit more established, I'm going to be getting one. But we are here today. We're back at Windy Acres Farm with the wonderful Alicia, who, if you remember, took us through an introduction to beekeeping in an Acts of Connection event that we did last year. So Alicia provided a lot of the basics for beekeeping, and now we're back this time to learn about harvesting honey from the beehives. So I'm going to be here in the background. We've got Jess on camera, who's going to be navigating the wonders of filming and making sure she doesn't get stung. And I'll be relaying any questions. So if you do have any questions as we go along, feel free to pop them in the chat. Or there is the Q&A function as well, and we'll get Alicia to answer as we go through. So over to you there in Toowoomba.
okay, thank you. Um, so we've had a couple of days of rain here and it's quite soggy, very muddy. And the bees are really, really busy today after, not being out for a few days. But coming into winter, it does get quite cold here. People liken it to like Canberra, although we don't get snow here. We get lots of heavy frosts here. So my experience has been that I do need to prepare the bees now, ready for winter, so that they survive through winter and come back in spring with a vengeance. So what I usually do is I pack my beehives down. Now, I've done most of my hives because it has started to get cold already, but I've left this one hive to show you today. This is actually a flow hive, and I thought I would show that because I know there were questions about flow hives last time, and I thought I'll show you this one. I'll show you how we harvest out of it, and then I'll show you how I prepare it ready for winter. So some people call it packing down for winter, and it's literally just that. We're packing the bees down into a small space. I'm going to just keep talking while I start pulling this apart. We're packing the bees down into a smaller space because during winter, the queen stops laying as much because there's not as much food for them to eat. So they don't want as many mouths to feed. So reducing the numbers in the hive will, it just means that no one's going to go hungry. So what actually happens, and nature's an amazing thing, the bees instinctively know when the weather's starting to get cooler and they start to pack themselves down. So this hive, if you just look in the top here, excuse the ants because the ants are coming up because of the rain. The bees have actually started packing themselves down. So ordinarily during spring, this would be overflowing with bees. This is what we call the honey super. So these are the flow frames. You can see that they're a little bit bigger than the ordinary frames that we have in the hive. So the bees have already started packing themselves down. They're trying to get in a big cluster and a big warm cluster down the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to harvest some of the honey out of these flow frames. And then we're going to pack them down into the bottom box, which is the brood box. That's where they'll all stay for winter. But it's really important that when you do that, that you're checking that they've got enough honey in the brood box to keep them going during winter, because the rest of the year they've got 2 boxes to distribute their honey. You don't want to take all their honey out of here and leave them none for winter. So, Jess, if you want to just come in closely, I had a look at these frames a couple of weeks ago. Even if you want to come around the back here. So the difference with a flow hive is there's an access window at the back here. Um, so we'll take this lip off. This is where we're going to access the honey and harvest the honey. It's really important for people with flow hives that they do check their frames, because looking on here, we can see not much honey. Like these cells, you should be able to see the honey in them. But if I take a frame out, it will actually be a different story. It was a couple of weeks ago, maybe because they've been inside, there weren't as much honey left in there. They're really tricky to get out. Is there anyone who's joining us that do have flow hives or are looking at getting a flow hive? Because I'm happy to answer questions about that.
No responses yet, but I'm just
Okay.
thought I'd say something so you know that you are being heard.
Thank you. Talking to myself. Yeah, these are really quite awkward. If you come in close, Jess, see all this? These are the bees. Sorry, darling. These are what we call, this is what we call propolis, and it's bee glue. So the bees fill in every little space in the hive so that there's no airflow, like it doesn't get cold in there, but also so that any potential pests don't have a place to sit. Okay. Just want to smoke that. Can you see that fairly clearly there?
Yeah, it's coming through really clearly.
Yeah. So in the center here, this is what we call nectar. So this is straight from the flowers, and the bees put that in there. Around the edge here where it's all capped with wax on top, that's ripe honey. So that is honey ready to harvest. I can actually see that the bees have cracked open a few of these. See how their little bottoms, they start to panic when you open up their hive and they're like, quick, we have to eat all the resources before someone takes it.
Mm.
So their little bottoms are wiggling as they try and drink up that nectar. If we were to harvest this particular frame, we would be harvesting a lot of nectar. Now, this is how people discovered mead, because they harvested a heap of nectar and it ferments and it becomes alcohol. So if we were to harvest this and put it in a jar, it would start to ferment. So I can't actually harvest this one. I'll have a look on the other side. See, that's a little bit more capped. Can you see the change in colour of the wax?
Yeah.
Depending on what they're foraging on, changes the colour of the wax.
So there's sort of two frames together there with on
So
each side.
this is one whole frame. But
Oh,
the flow
right. Yeah.
frames, the flow frames have two sides. So what happens is we take that little cap out, and I've got a giant key, this giant key that we put in here. I'm not going to crack this one. I'll do it on the next one. You pop that in there, and it basically slides the two halves apart and allows for the honey to come down the middle here and out here. So it cracks it from the inside. Whereas if we were traditionally harvesting it, we would use something to uncap and take the wax off the top of there and spin it from outside, whereas the flow hive's basically harvesting it from the inside, if that makes sense.
So these are kind of promoted as being less destructive.
Yeah, look, I I have mixed opinions about the flow hives. I've obviously got a few that I use. What's going on there? And I like the enjoyment of taking frames out like we've just done with that one and having a really good look at it and studying it and working out, um, you know, what they've been foraging on depending on the colour of the wax and the colour of the pollen. Um, you still do need to pull it apart. And I think that's the misconception with the flow hives, is that you can basically just put a key in, turn the tap, and you get your honey. But you do
Yeah.
still need to really look at all of this, because you couldn't see from the outside here if there was actually capped honey or not. You can just sort of see this profile, which doesn't
Yeah.
tell you much at all. So I guess in a way, if you are just going into harvest without pulling the frames out, yeah, there is um, less disruption to the bees, but you do still need to get in and have a look. So this was an inside frame, and you can see here that it's sort of mostly capped. The bees are trying madly to get that in there. Let's have a look
We've
at
had a
this.
question from someone that's very new and wants
Sure.
to know about the smoke.
Yes. Is the question why we're using smoke?
Yes, what the
Yeah,
smoke does.
yeah. So bees communicate via pheromones, so smell. Um, So as soon as you open the hive, the bees start signaling to each other with their smell, danger, there's someone in our hive. And if you were in here, you could hear the sound of the bees get louder towards each other. So vibration and sound is how they communicate, and smell. So by using the smoker, basically we're masking that smell and masking them talking to each other so they don't get really irate at us. So it doesn't harm them in any way. We're not using excessive smoke that we're coughing and having a fit either. What I use in my smoker is actually lavender stems. So they're well used to the lavender stems. There's nothing nasty in there. I've used my husband's barbecue chips before because didn't have anything else. Yeah, and a lot of people use pine needles if they've got conifers in their garden. So yeah, if it's not offensive to you, then it won't hurt the bees. I'll just show you this one. So these, oh gosh, they're stuck in there. This one's completely empty. So this is what I'm talking about when I say the bees have started packing themselves down. So they haven't put anything extra in there because they would have to keep the honey warm and keep it at a certain temperature over winter, and they're just not going to have enough people. Yeah. So these are pretend. Yeah. So this is all plastic. The bees, I'll show you.
Make it themselves like they're doing it.
Yeah. So see this is all plastic. They have put a little bit of wax on there. They've put wax in the cells. So they technically don't have to build these frames. Oh, there is a little bit of nectar in there. They don't have to build these frames from scratch, which takes a lot of resources from the bees. Like it takes them a long time to build a frame. So the upside is that you get honey quicker. The downside is it's plastic. And I don't know, I think I mentioned last time, my experience with using plastic in the hives is that my bees can be a little bit snobby, excuse me, and they don't tend to like the plastic in the hive. So that's just, that's just my experience. But these bees, this hive was actually donated to the farm by a fellow who was didn't have time. He knew varroa mite was coming to Queensland and he just didn't have time to look after the hive the way that he wanted to. So he asked if we'd adopt the hive, which we did.
And how are you going with varroa? No signs of it yet?
No signs of it yet. This hive's really healthy. And I have had a little bit of small hive beetle in my hives with all the wet weather. This hive actually has nothing. And I did want to talk about that today because over winter, we don't actually open the hives. So we have to, sorry, I need another hand, don't I? No, it's okay. I just need to get this trap out. So what I do is I do get a bit proactive. Can you hear how cranky the bees are getting with me?
We're getting an odd buzz here and there.
Are you? Because I'm trying to put my hand actually inside the hive. So these are all empty as well. They've started to pack down. Empty, empty.
Because to keep them warm in winter, they have to do that physically by huddling around the honey.
Yeah, they do, and they need numbers. So if the queen stops laying as much, we're not going to have numbers, and the bigger the hive, obviously we need more bees. If there's not the bees for the space, that's when they become really, really susceptible to pests. So by packing them down, giving them a smaller space to keep warm and to protect, it actually keeps them from becoming overrun with pests as well. So see this here. This is called an apothor trap. So it's used to treat small hive beetles. So this has been in there for about 6 months. Can you see all the propolis? So propolis is a mixture of wax and resin. So they've glued it in there, made it part of their hive. And what happens is they chase the hive beetles inside here, and there's an insecticide inside there that the hive beetles eat and die. The bees can't get in there, but the hive beetles can. So that will need to be thrown out and we'll put a new one in.
And they
a
know
second.
to do that? They know that little thing's going to
Yeah, the bees are really clever. They like herd the hive beetles in there, and the hive beetles try and hide from the bees. And that's when they get trapped in there. Right, I'm going to open this and harvest this bit of honey. And then we'll have a look in the brood box while that's harvesting. The downside to harvesting out of the flow hive is that it takes a long time because it's sort of just naturally dripping. It will take a bit longer. So while that's dripping the honey out, we'll have a look in the brood box and see that they're nice and healthy, ready for winter. So if you
While
just,
you're, I've got a question around packing down.
yeah.
But do they naturally congregate in a specific area, like in the middle
Yeah,
and the bottom?
yeah. So with an infrared camera, if you were to look at the hive when there's two boxes on, you will see a hot spot in the middle here. Can you see that? So in the middle of the brood box and the middle of the honey. So they always fill the hive from the inside out. So I knew to look in the middle frames for the honey because that's where they fill first. They won't put honey in the outside frames if they haven't filled the centre. So when I look in the brood box, it will be the same. Sorry about my crude pinch bar here, just to get these apart, because I'm just going to sit. The propolis is really epic. So I'm going to sit this box over to the side while it harvests the honey. So we can look in the bottom box. So if I'm doing a regular inspection, I wouldn't need to pull it apart like I'm doing now, unless I've got concerns about the queen. Right, let's get the key. So this is the key for the flow hives, and it basically cracks it all apart. These are my little tubes. See how cranky they're getting with us. Oops, sorry.
I mean, you've done some major destruction there from looking.
I've literally pulled the second level off their house.
Yeah, I'd be upset too.
Yeah, sorry, girls.
And with the pest tray thing, I forgot what
Yeah.
you called it. Can you put that in a is there something similar to a natural hive? Is the question we've come. Hang on, let me read that. Is there something similar in a natural hive to take care of pests? Like what keeps the pests
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that I say quite often with, I call them unmanaged hives or feral hives. So, for example, if there was bees in a tree in your backyard that were unmanaged, you're not able to get into the tree, that would be a feral hive, an unmanaged hive. And unfortunately, the downside of that is that you can't actively check them and you can't actively treat them for pests. So they actually become quite a, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it becomes a bit of a problem if you've got managed hives. You can't control what's going on in those feral hives. So that's where disease can be introduced into your apiary is if you've got feral hives around. Yeah, so there's no treatment in a feral hive, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, can you see where I've got the key? It goes right to the back of the frame. But if I can,
Need some muscles.
I have to do a bit at a time, I think. Sometimes I have to go quarter of the way. There we go. So it's not gentle. Oh, sorry, girls. There we go. So we should start to see honey coming down there. I'm just going to lift the front of the hive and let gravity do its thing. Any minute now. Because it's not super warm today, the honey won't be warm.
Yeah. What is the temperature like in Toowoomba today?
I think it was 20 degrees yesterday. It's probably about 22 today. Okay. So let's I'm sure Jess will notice when that's starting to flow. Okay, let's come over here and check this box before we close it up. So see this on top here? Oh, hang on, sorry. Jess has got a tripod. Okay. See this black thing on top? This is the queen excluder. So quite often I get asked, how come we don't have the queen, or how come there's no babies in the honey super? The queen can't get through this. The queen is the biggest bee in the hive. So by having the queen excluder between the two levels, it means that she can't get up and start laying eggs in your honey, because no one wants to eat baby bees with their honey. Okay, so I'm going to take that off. Yep, thanks. Because it will be propolised onto. This probably needs replacing. See how it started to crack? Yeah. Oh. They're all good. Okay. So can you just zoom in there, Jess? I'm going to check the very middle frames because I want to check that the queen is laying. I've just noticed something. See this here? That to me looks like wax moth poo. And they look like wax moth cells. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to remove that.
So this is a pest?
This is a pest, wax moth. Usually the bees are pretty good at keeping them out. Like I can't see any actual moths. They usually are really good at kicking them out the front door. I'm just going to get Jess to zoom in here because there's a little bee with pollen pants in there. Oh, I'm sure you can see that. In there. Pollen pants. Pollen pants. So when they collect the pollen, that just in there. Can you see that? Actually, sorry. So they collect the pollen.
Just see it.
Yeah, little yellow fluff balls. They collect the pollen and they put it on their back legs to carry it. So they've got these polished cavities on their back legs that the pollen sticks into, and they put a little bit of nectar and make it into little pollen balls. The beekeeping term is pollen pants. Yeah, it's really original because they look like they're carrying bloomers. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, there's honey flowing.
Yay.
Slowly, slowly. So it could take probably an hour for that one frame to fully harvest, just given how cool it is today. So this is what I love to see. When I pull a frame out and it's covered in bees like this, that is the sign of a good, healthy hive. Okay, I'll show you what we're looking at here. So a little bit different to the honey super. See all this that's capped here? This is what we call capped brood. There's actually a bee hatching there. Welcome to the world, little girl. Can you see her hatching there?
We can.
Yeah, so she's hatching. So they chew their way out. This is just really thin. Oh, there's a couple more there. They chew their way out, a bit like a moth or a butterfly chewing out of cocoon. They're chewing out of their little cocoons in here. So over here, this is all brood as well. So the flat brood, the one, oh look, the pollen. The flat brood is all female brood. I won't find any drone brood in here, but the drones are a lot bigger, so they have like a domed top on them. They're putting pollen in the cells next to the babies because this is what they're actually feeding them as they're developing. If you look down here, you can see some larva that hasn't been capped yet. And that's what the nurse bees are feeding the babies as they grow, is what we call bee bread. It's that mix of pollen and nectar together, and it's pure protein. So I know I've left all these weeds flowering over here, the turnip weed, because it's a really good source of protein. So I said to my husband, we just need to leave that. We're not going to slash that. Can you see the pollen in the cell down here? Because that's what they need to feed their babies.
So we love it when people don't mow their weeds and keep the flowers going for the bees.
Absolutely. I've got a sign out the front that says, pardon the weeds, I'm feeding the bees. Yeah, and particularly that turnip weed, even though it's terrible agriculturally, it's actually scientifically shown to have the highest source of protein. So, and it looks pretty. It kind of looks like a canola crop, but it's not.
Are those yellow ones?
Yeah, yeah. All the can you see them? These ones here.
I always thought they were like just canola.
Yeah, wild
Blown
canola.
away. Yeah.
As a side note, makes terrible honey. Ugh, awful. It's a bit like when all the dairy cows were on the clover and the milk was going green. Terrible flavour. This is a really beautiful frame of brood. See all this capped brood? And you can see here there's all this nectar. So the bees have started storing the nectar in these frames as well because they know they're not storing it upstairs because it's starting to get cold.
We had a comment in the chat saying
Yep.
there's no such thing as weeds, just different plants doing different jobs.
Love that. Love that. Okay. Nice brood on that side. If I hold this to the sun, can you see the nectar and the pollen in those cells up there? That's a really good sign. And I'm loving that we're in May and I can see a lot of bees with pollen on. That's
So
great.
that's late flowering or?
We've had all that rain, so I think it's just spurred along all the weeds. So as I get further out on these frames, this is amazing. These bees know what they're doing. I have a bit of a saying that we just trust the bees. Like if I can't work out what's going on, just trust the bees. So this full frame is honey and nectar. They're well sourced for winter.
So how many full frames do they need to get through winter?
So I run 8 frame boxes. Usually I have 4 frames in this box of honey and 4 frames of brood. So those few that we've just checked, they were all brood. They were in the centre. Remember how I said they do the centre? They keep all their warmth in the centre, and then they've got the honey on the outside. Jess just asked, why is this so black? We're not going to discriminate against the frame, but it's nearly time to cycle this frame out. Can you see? Well, it's obviously dark because the bees have used it a lot, but each of these cells is getting smaller and smaller every time the bees use it. So can you see how thick that cell is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it means that it stores less every time they use it. So if they're putting their babies in there, the babies won't grow as big as they potentially could. And I actually had a hive that I opened one day and I was like, oh, these bees are really small. What's happened to them? And it was just that the frames needed to be cycled out. So what will happen in spring is I'll take that frame and I'll put it in the top box. Once it's full of honey, I'll take it out and in this box, I'll put a fresh frame. So I'm actually really quite happy with how that hive looks. They've got lots of stores, so I'm not worried about taking the honey super off them. Just check the very last frame, just so that they've got a little bit of room. Yeah, so this one's quite empty. I could feel it when I picked it up. There's nothing on that side yet. That's a cockroach. Yeah, so they've still got a little bit of room to grow in there, but for the most part, they're really nice and tightly packed in the middle there. So basically all we do then for winter, switch check that. I'll get a new apple trap. I was doing a bit of research last night, the night before, about more natural ways of pest control, because this is a bifenthrin. It's a termicide that they've got inside the trap, which, look, it is a chemical, but at the same time, the bees can't get at it. So I'm quite happy that they're not going to be consuming it, but it is still in the hive. So I guess that's still an issue. I'm going to put that in the bottom of the hive. So I'm just going to slide it in the bottom like that. But this is what I also do in winter. I'm not going to clean it. Start cleaning the hive with my chucks. So just normal chucks cloths. The small hive beetle that I was talking about before are tiny little black beetles that then lay a larva, and it some people might have heard of a slime out, and that's what happens when the hive beetle gets in, because they eat the larva and destroy the developing larva and all those cells. So by protecting them from the bottom with the apathaw trap and protecting them with the chucks on the top, it's I at least know that I've done everything I can for winter to protect them. Now, the reason I'm using chucks is the little hive beetles are like little sticky dots, like little Velcro sticky dots. So if they come and climb over the chucks, they actually get caught in it because they're like little Velcro dots. So yeah, when I pull this out in spring, sorry, I'll know whether there's been any hive beetle in there because they'll be still in there. So that's basically all I'm going to do. Now, I am going to keep all my equipment on the hive. Just the reason I keep all the equipment on there is so that I don't have to cart it back in spring. So the only difference being, I'm going to put this really beautiful bit of core flute in there. These are election signs. No, she gave them to me. Kirsty Smolensky, thank you. I said I will take some of those because they're really handy for the beehives.
Oh, it's nice to see election core flute being used for something other than going straight to landfill.
Absolutely. She was really good, and she's given them out to kindies and people building garden beds and all sorts of things. And I said they'll be perfect for me as well. So yeah, really, really chuffed that I got some of those because they're actually quite expensive to buy. Okay, I have left just a little bit of space that the bees, oh, there's a really dark orange pollen there. I'm always interested to see, oh, she's gone, where they're getting their pollen when they're different colours. They can still get up to the honey super because there was that little bit of nectar in that last frame. Remember I said I couldn't harvest it. I am going to leave them in there, those ones that have still got a little bit of honey. So they can access them, but they don't need to keep it warm because we've got this in here. Sort of basically, it's just an extra bit of food if they need it, but they don't have to get to it if they don't want to. Oh, there's a lot of honey. Oh, oops, whoopsies.
Ooh, what's happened there?
I don't know.
What about the bees?
Yeah.
The honey.
Yeah. So this is my thing. When you look at the Flow Hive videos and they're all standing around without suits on, sorry, I don't mean to badmouth Flow Hive, but it's just, Instagram versus reality. There are still going to be bees. There are still bees who are trying to get the honey that you're harvesting. It's not all peaceful like we've been led to believe. Yeah, it's dripping. Just going to put that down there. So then what I'll do is it's coming out here because of the nectar. But if you can see in the bottom of the bucket there is a fair bit of honey in there.
Did the bees die?
Which ones?
The ones in the honey, do they drown?
They're just swimming. Yeah, they will. If they've gone in there, they will die. But see these? They're helping each other out, helping a sister out. They suck off the honey off their friends. Yeah, it is the first time I harvested honey. I was like, I didn't realize it was going to be such a massacre.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's the reality of it.
Does this happen when you have a regular hive?
No.
Okay.
So because you're taking the frames away, so if I was to harvest this as a regular hive, I would take that frame, and what I do is I brush all the bees off it. Usually I just tap it on the ground, leave the bees there. And that's what this is for, because I'm going to take those empty frames and then I'll take that and spin them in my spinner. So there's not as many bees trying to get what I've taken.
The case for Flow Hive seems to be getting less and less for less invasive and easier extraction.
Yeah. Look, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but this is how you do it. But I just have found that the reality of doing it is very different to what I've observed on YouTube videos and on Instagram, because there's obviously, they can smell the honey and they're trying to get it. So that's what they're doing. So I'm not going to leave these empty frames in here over winter because it's just going to attract pests. So the ones that are empty, I'll take. That one that still has honey, has nectar in it, I'll leave that. The bees will clean that up and I'll probably come back in a couple of weeks and just take the empty ones. I don't necessarily want to take it because I can't spin these in my honey extractor. They're too big.
So what do you mean by that? Spin in your honey extractor?
Yeah. So the regular frames out of my regular hives, when I take them, that's how I get the honey out of the frames, is I put them in. It's a bit like a filing cabinet. Take the wax cap off the top. So that's what I was talking about here. When I take a frame, oops. If I was to take this as a regular frame to harvest the honey, I would take it over. I've got, you can just use a fork. So you use a fork to take the capping off the wax. Sounds like bubble wrap when you take it off, it pops. And then what you do is you put it in the honey spinner like that. You spin it round and round and round and round. And the centrifugal force actually forces the honey out of the frames. So out of these cells. So then you end up with a frame that's empty again. And then you can reuse it.
Like a centrifuge.
Yeah. Pretty clever. But you can't do that because these are sort of 1.5 times the size. They don't physically fit in the spinner. I am going to take that one and I will freeze these over winter, which is what I've done with all my other frames out of my other hives. Freezing them just means that any pests that are caught in the wax, or if there's like some eggs or a little bit of poo, it's frozen, and then nothing can grow from it when I put it back in the hive next season. Was there a question?
No, I have a question. So once you harvest that honey, you're going to have a lot of bees in that flow hive one. How many steps from this to being in a jar and going on your toast?
Yeah, not as many as you would think. So see how I've got the sieve here?
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll get rid of all the bees off this, and the honey that's in the bottom of the bucket, I'll tap out using the tap on the side there, and it'll go straight into a jar. So the difference between, say, what we're doing here today and the honey that you might buy in a supermarket is this is straight from the hive, pure, all honey, and we don't heat treat it. The honey that you would buy in the supermarket, I'm not sure whether I explained this last time. I'm getting my high horse a little bit about it, but a lot of the honey that you buy in the supermarket now has been mixed with imported honey. And because of the relaxed laws on what's constituted as honey when they're importing it, what we're technically getting is maybe a 95% corn syrup or sugar syrup and 5% honey as an import. Then Australia mixes it with, say, 2% Australian honey, and they can sell it as Australian honey. So basically what you're buying is 95% sugar syrup and the rest is honey, but it's been heat treated. So when you heat treat honey, you're cooking all the goodness out of it. So you may as well just buy a bag of sugar and make your own sugar syrup. So that's, it's quite sad. And once you start explaining that to people, because they say, oh, your honey tastes so different to the stuff I buy from the supermarket. That's because it's actual honey and it's not a corn syrup or a sugar syrup. So, I saw the
So if you
thing again, a pollen butt.
And is that why it flows? Sorry, you might have to repeat this. Is that why it flows so easily compared to?
Yes. So the viscosity of the honey that you would buy in the supermarket's really runny. And I often get asked, why don't you sell honey in a squeezy bottle? So real honey, like you can see the rate that's flowing. It's thick. and during winter, quite often it crystallizes, and natural honey crystallizes when it gets cooler. Honey that's been heat treated won't crystallize. It will stay liquid and really liquid, like almost watery, because it's been heat treated. So yeah, that's my little soapbox moment. So if you
So
can,
anything been in the supermarket that's labeled pure honey could still not be pure honey.
yeah, and it's the labelling laws in Australia that are quite relaxed. It means that backyard beekeepers like myself can sell our honey without needing a food license, but it also means the big guys can label it as pure honey and it not be pure honey, and or Australian honey. Like I know a lot of people are trying, especially I think it's Australian Made Week this week, so people are looking for that Australian logo. Well, the honey jars can have that Australian logo, but not be 100% Australian. So it's a misunderstanding. Yeah, I guess it's just not something that's talked about openly enough for people to understand. So even if every person went and told another person, buy your honey from like a farmer's market or a fruit shop or from, you know, a roadside stall, and at least you'll know it's actually real honey. Because
Okay.
the other thing too with Manuka honey, so the Manuka honey that you buy for $35 on the shelf at Woolies, it's been heat treated. So it's got none of those great qualities of good Manuka honey anyway.
And I know it's not your wheelhouse, but I'm assuming it's a similar situation in New Zealand because we've got a few New Zealand folks on
Yeah,
the
I'm
session
not
today.
sure about this. Like a lot of the time, our labelling laws and New Zealand labelling laws are very similar. Um, same food standards. Yeah, so I'm guessing it's the same. With Manuka honey, it actually sets solid. It can set solid in the frame. So trying to extract Manuka honey is really, really tricky because it doesn't flow. It crystallizes really easily. So when I see this golden syrup looking Manuka honey, it always makes me chuckle a little bit. I'm going to show you this frame because you can see, if you come around here, Jess, you can actually see that the two sides have cracked. Oh yeah, look at that orange pollen. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, pollen pants. Jess has got all the lingo now. But can you see how the two parts of those cells have cracked open? They don't
Yeah.
look symmetrical anymore. So after I'm finished and the wax has come off the top, that's why it's glowing on the bottom there. But what I'll do is I'll put the key back in and it'll realign the frames so that there is still a bit of honey in there.
So what do you need to do because it's spilled out on the bottom? Do you need to like clean that out now or will the bees
Yeah.
sort it out?
You've got the lingo. Yes, the bees will clean it up. I'm going to put that in the hive and they'll clean it up. So instead of using the core flute that I put in just before, I'm actually going to put that bit of core flute in and they can just clean it up. Is it flowing a bit more easily now?
It's still flowing.
Yeah, I've just got the other end lifted up so I can, yeah. So it's really quite easy to pack them down. I'll tell you what happens if you don't pack your bees down and you live in a cool climate. The queen will feel like she needs to keep laying a lot, but there won't be enough food to feed the developing babies. And what will happen is the adult bees will start to starve, and the baby bees are not going to develop. So what will happen is gradually the whole hive is going to start to starve to death and your colony can die off before spring. If you recognise that they're starting to look like the numbers like if you come around and have a look at the front, there's quite a number of bees at the front, and I will come and have a look during winter and just look at the activity at the front of the hive. If you notice that there's not as many bees at the front of the hive, you can feed the bees. So you can feed them a sugar syrup. It's not as good as nectar. It's not as good as pollen, but it will keep them going. So the sugar syrup is a 2-to-1. I use a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of water, and then you just dissolve it into a syrup. And then my kids call it DoorDash. So we put it in like a guinea pig feeder. It's not a guinea pig feeder. It's a proper bee feeder. You turn it upside down and you just stick it in the front of the door, and they consume it. I add colouring to my sugar syrup so that if the bees are storing it in the cells and I open up in spring and I see all this bright purple nectar, I'll know that it's sugar syrup and it's not actually nectar. So I'm not going to harvest my sugar syrup as honey and be like the big guys. Sorry to get political on that. So that's basically all we're going to do. I'm going to leave this frame that we've harvested. I'm going to leave that in the honey super. I'll pop it back in a minute. Like I said, it's going to take a little while for that to finish flowing. But what I'll do is I'll put it back on top, and then I'll put the roof back on as usual. But the bees are mainly in that bottom box. They're packed down in there for winter. So they haven't got space in the honey super to fill up frames. So they'll stick to the bottom. Can you see that this little girl's drinking this nectar? If you zoom in. No, the one on here. Can you see her long tongue? It's a proboscis. It's like a straw. Can you see that? Let me get some her orange tongue. So she's trying to sip up the nectar. Does not want to.
We're just seeing the core flute.
Yeah, it doesn't want to focus.
Sorry. Yeah. So they'll just clean it all up. There'll be a fair bit of activity here today while they clean up the the spillage. I take this frame with me as well. How are we going for time? Did you want to have a look at what I've done with my traditional hives just to show you the pack down over here?
Yeah, we've got 10 minutes left, so we've got a bit of time.
Let's have a look. So this hive I've already packed down. So you can see the brood box is there. Then I've got a lid in between, and then I've just got an empty box. But in there also, I've checked all the pest traps. So these are pest traps. These will show me what's going on in the hive. So that's a little bit of webbing. So there's obviously been some kind of wax moth in there, but that's a good indication. They're like toaster trays. And there's a bit of oil in there. So any pests that go down can drown in that oil. So I've kept it all together, but the bees are only in this bottom box. And then you can see that I put entrance reducers on so that there's only a one way in and out.
That's so cute.
So that there's no draft going in their front door. It just keeps it a little bit warmer in there during winter. I'll take that off in spring because there won't be enough room for them all to come bustling out and go and collect all that juicy nectar.
Sorry, I just checked back into the chat. I was looking at the Q&A thing.
Yeah.
Do you know of any brands that are safe to go to if you are going to buy from a supermarket in terms of honey, or?
Not from the supermarket, no. Yeah, that's a tricky question. Because it's, yeah.
I've lost the thing, sorry. I'm getting back in. Just tell her
She's just trying to figure out what she's doing because she's only got one finger poking out of her bee suit.
Oh, poor Jess has completely left the chat, unfortunately.
She's there. She's coming, incoming.
Everyone will just bear with us for a second. We can still hear you, Alicia, if you want to.
Can you? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's not very. Oh, I've got a bit of feedback.
Oh, I'll mute Jess. Hang on.
Oh, and you're seeing me.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, it's really hard to know what, because they don't need to declare on their labels where the honey's actually sourced or whether it's been heat treated or not. It is hard to know. But like I said, if you've got a local farmers market or even if you've got a local community group, you can just call out and say, are there any beekeepers that I can buy honey directly from? You'll probably find that there are more than you know. And at least then you're getting the good stuff, because coming into winter, a spoonful of honey is 10 times better than, say, a strepsil or a buttermenthol. Like it's full of antioxidants and antibacterial and anti-inflammatories. It's actually just liquid gold. So if you can get your hands on the good stuff And don't get caught up in, you know, the buzz things like the Manuka honey. Any honey has great qualities to it as long as it's raw, unheat treated. Yeah. I am going to cap this back up. So if you come around here, so what happens when you're done harvesting that frame, what I'll have to do then is put my key on top of that and forgot there were no other frames in there. Close it back. Oh, yes. Sorry, girls. Close that frame back up. So that just realigns all the cells. Take that out. I've just asked my father-in-law to 3D print some of these for me because I keep losing them because they're clear.
Lost Jess again.
Yeah. I think my phone's overheating. She thinks her phone might be overheating.
Oh no. Maybe Jess, could you grab Alicia's phone out of her pocket and we might just have to use the camera off that. Love the technical issues of doing something out in a field.
And because I've got gloves on. Oh, there you go. There's me.
Nope, there's me. It's me again.
Thanks, everyone. So what I'll do is I will pop this back on the hive now.
Stop laughing.
It's sideways, but at least we've got Alicia.
Hang on.
Oh, hang on. Okay.
I've got to adjust my hair because I can't see it. What's all happening here today?
Ask her if that's better.
That's good.
Okay.
She can only hear you, remember?
Oh, you can hear me now.
Yeah, we'll just have to stay close to Alicia now.
Okay. So if you look in this hive now, because I've blocked off the bottom box, there is still a little, sometimes people call these hive mats. I call it a piece of core flute, but it's, they can still get up there and get down. I'll leave that one in there like I said I was going to do, but they don't technically have to keep that space warm anymore. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Yeah, a little bit of a mess. That's okay. You want me to? I'll just leave it there like that for a second. While I put all my bits back. So can you see that I've just put the cap back on there? Put the cap back on there so no more honey flows out. We'll put this back in here. So you could take these back, like put them in your shed for winter if you wanted to. You don't technically need to keep the box on the hive. I just do because I've got so many hives. It just takes a lot of farting backwards and forwards if I take them all back with me. I think because there's moisture in it, it's expanded. I tend to paint my hives rather than stain them because you can.
Nah, got me.
She got one on.
I got one.
You got stung.
Oh,
That ant.
yeah.
Did you get it out?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, Jess, take him on for the team today.
Oh, danger money required, Rhiannon.
Yeah, I don't think I've got this on our public liability insurance.
So my smoke's run out. That's why the bees are getting a bit hectic.
Yeah, they're a bit more aggressive now.
Well, we're getting close to the end of the session anyway, so I certainly don't want Jess to get stung again. Are there any final thoughts or questions as we start to wrap up?
I think the main thing is when you've been beekeeping for a little while, you do become quite intuitive and start to know your bees. Like I feel quite confident that this particular hive is quite healthy and is going to survive winter the way that we've packed it down. I noticed just before the hive next to us, I packed it down a couple of weeks ago and it was like, oh, it's not looking very strong. And I did notice, yeah, the hive has actually died off. So I don't know. I don't know what's happened there. I gave them enough food, but because we've had quite a bit of rain in the last few weeks, they obviously just didn't have enough. So that's a lesson to me that perhaps I should have looked at the weather forecast and given them more honey, knowing that we were going into a wet period of time. But yeah, it's such an enjoyable thing, and I can lose track of time just by, having a look at the pollen pants, or, I quite often just look what they're doing. Like, what is that bee actually doing? She's just sitting there. There's another one with pollen. They help each other out. They've each got a job in the hive. So it's quite interesting, I think.
Well, we've got lots of comments coming through actually saying exactly that. It's been really interesting to watch you go through this process and learn more about the bees. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for inviting us back again. And
happy Bee Day.
Happy World Bee Day. Yes.
I did just want to add something about native bees if I've got a minute.
Yeah.
So native bees are very different in the way that you prepare them for winter, because we're not harvesting honey from them. We might even add it to a reel that you put up later, what I've done to overwinter my native bees. So they're my native stingless bees, just to show you, if you do have a hive of native bees in your garden, what you can do to protect them during winter. It's pretty easy. I just put a styrofoam box over the hive or a little bit of builder's insulation wrap, just to keep them nice and warm for winter and make sure they're in a nice sunny spot. So oftentimes I'll move the hive during winter and then move it back to a shady spot during summer. So we might be able to add that.
We can do that.
Yeah, just to show people. If
lots of thumbs up with that.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, happy World Bee Day, and go out there and buy some local honey. Find a local producer, go to your farmer's market, wherever you can, avoid the supermarkets, and plant lovely bee plants in your garden so they've got lots of food.
So if people do want to buy our honey, if you want to buy some honey from our honey harvest today, you can actually buy it online.
Buy online.
And I can ship it to you.
I think we should buy some of the honey you've harvested today, and we can give it to our the winner of our Green Impact Cup Challenge, which will be announced on Thursday, World Biodiversity Day.
Yes. It'll still be warm by then.
Provided we can ship it. If it's a New Zealand winner, then we'll have to source some local New Zealand honey, because I don't think we can send that, but we'll do what we can.
And I don't think we can send to South Australia or Western Australia either, just because of biosecurity. Yeah.
So big caveat on that.
You could, but yeah, except for those states. Sorry.
Yeah, amazing. We'll share the website for Windy Acres honey to everybody that's registered. This recording will be available on the ACTS member portal, along with the previous one that Alicia did with us last year. And yeah, check us out on the socials for more information on how to look after your native stingless bees.
Amazing. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good
Bye.
day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.